Today, on August 20th, Tuesday, we are at the 78th Street Library with Mr. Eurich Griffin to talk about the March on Washington for Freedom and Jobs of 1963. Mr. Griffin, if you'd like to share your memories leading up to, the day of, how you felt afterwards, feel free, please.
Okay. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I went into service in May of 1959. I got out of the service 4 years later in May of 1963. I got out with 2 stripes, even though I was on flight status. I was an airborne radio operator, stationed mostly at Otis Air Force Base on the Cape. So we went out Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and so forth, and out and did some stuff. Anyhow, when I had a job, I got a job at the Census Bureau when I got out of the service because one of my neighbors was a big honcho down at the Census Bureau, so he got a job for me. I didn't start Howard until February, or either January or February of 1964, because I just wanted some time to spend by myself. I bought a new car and so forth before I started school. I finished school in 3.5 years, 3.5 years to you people there. But anyhow, I heard about the March on Washington. So I went to it in my car, and I believe, I'm not sure now, that's 50 years ago, I believe I parked at the Fed, the building, the Fed, because I knew how to get around Washington, because that's where I was from. And I parked at the Fed, and as I was walking over to where the mall was, somebody handed me a sign, and I carried a sign that said, "We demand equal housing now." And I carried that actually, I carried that back home at the time when the whole thing was over. And I guess my folks, when they moved from where we were living at the time to down here, they moved down here, something happened to that sign. But I carried that sign, "We demand equal housing now." And I was up in the front part of the thing. Martin Luther King was up there, and I was in the front part because I knew how to get around, right? I knew how to get around D.C. So there were a bunch of people. Everything was quiet, calm. I mean, calm in the sense that there was no disturbance or anything like that. And so I just listened to what was going on. I didn't know until just the other day on TV that Mahalia Jackson said, "Martin, tell him about the dream." I didn't know that at the time, but there I was, and that's the beginning and end of my story.
Well, prior to the time between getting out of the service and the march, had you been involved in any other political things, activism?
No.
Nothing, just... No,
I was not involved in anything. I got a new car, new convertible, when I got out of the service. No, I was not involved.
It was more something that seemed like more fun to do maybe for the day, an experience perhaps?
I don't remember. I knew about it, but I don't remember why I went. I knew how to get around, so I knew where I could go and probably park. But I don't really remember why I went. And I wasn't somebody who sat at lunch counters and things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew I didn't cross the 14th Street Bridge because that's where Virginia is. And I never went over the 14th Street Bridge. And I remember I was stationed in Mississippi, and I know my mother cried when she found out I was going to be stationed in Mississippi. And when I got off the train, some white guys were on the train with uniforms in Mississippi, and a cab driver pulled up to me and said, "Aren't you going to the base?" I had on a uniform. I said, "Yeah, I'm going to the base." He said, "Well, come on." I said, "I can ride with them," because I'd heard all these stories about Mississippi. But other than that, I mean, I didn't, I don't know why I went. I went because it was a march on Washington, and they were going to be peaceful and so forth, so I went. But that's about all I can remember as to why I actually went there.
When you were there in the moment or afterwards, did you understand the magnitude of it? Did you think this would be something people would be talking about in 50 years?
No, never understood the magnitude of it, and I didn't think people would be talking about it, and I didn't think that they would be talking about Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech the way they are these days. But I just never thought about it.
It didn't strike you in that moment that it was this, you were not moved by it, you did not see it as something that...
Well, unlike that guy that I saw on TV recently who said that he whispered to somebody standing next to him, he didn't know who the person was, that these people are about ready to go to church. After Mahalia Jackson said, "Tell them about the dream." No, it was a stirring. I wish I could get it on a CD or something now, on a DVD, a CD, I guess you would call it. I wish I could get the thing. I can't find it anywhere.
I think I've heard there are recordings of it. I'm not sure how to locate them.
Yeah.
I think there is something.
Yeah. Maybe but I don't have a computer. I live in an area. It's a gated retirement community. I live in an area where I have access to a computer, but I don't have one at home. So I would really like to find out where to get one of those "I Have a Dream" CDs, but I don't know where to go.
Do you think it was a youthful thing that you just, being young and having a convertible, having fun, that maybe it wasn't something that seemed so important to you then, being, how we never appreciate things when we're young? And
yeah, something like that. In the service, I was in the service, had been in the service. And of course, not of course, but we didn't deal in that stuff like the Black Panthers and all that. We didn't deal in all of that back then. So I don't think I felt anything in that regard, right?
When you went to college, did that change? Did you find yourself becoming a little bit more involved, or do you know people who were involved in various movements?
Yes, and of course I went to Howard and finished in 3.5 years. Muhammad Ali came. I think President Johnson came to the university while I was still there. I graduated in '70 and then went on up to the law school up in Cambridge, but I still wasn't that involved in terms of, I didn't want to get on like Viola Liuzzo, that white woman who got killed with those, there were people, she was driving them somewhere and got killed. No, I still wasn't into all of that. But no. I didn't really get involved while I was at Howard. We did create something we created the Harvard Black Law Students Association, and there were 16 of us out of 540 first-year students. There were 16. That was the biggest class they had ever had at Harvard Law School at the time.
You mean 16 African Americans of the 540? Or?
Well, I wouldn't call us I don't like that term. That's Jesse Jackson's
whatever term you want to use.
That's Jesse Jackson's term. He's full of it. There were 16 blacks there. Right?
All men or men and women?
No, there weren't women per se. There may have been one woman, but there were 16. I know there were 16 of us. Mm-hmm. I think there was only one who was a woman.
And you said it was an association or a review, what was it?
We started the Harvard Black Law Students Association because they didn't have a black professor at the time. And then Derek Bell was the one who came in the next year after we protested. The guy who was in charge of our organization, who was the president, is actually from Tallahassee, Florida. His name is Bishop Hollifield. And Bishop had he had hair out like this, like Angela Davis, was that her name?
Yes.
Yeah, had hair out like that. And he didn't smile that much. And he looked at those people. Those people were scared. And Bishop, all he had to do was look at them. And the dean, everybody was really scared. They didn't know what Bishop was about to do. But I think Bishop went to Florida A&M before he went to the law school.
What brought you down to Florida? You said your family moved down here then?
Well, I married a lady who was originally from St. Petersburg. Mm-hmm. And so when I left law school, I came down to St. Petersburg.
Did you have a practice? Did you have a law practice here then?
I was the first black below Washington, D.C. and out to California to be hired by a major law firm.
Wow.
Yeah. And I clerked for a federal appeals judge who lived in St. Petersburg, Paul Roney. I clerked for him, and then I went with this firm, Collin Fields, Ward, Emanuel, Smith and Cutler. Worked with them for 22 years. So I was the first black below D.C. and out to California to be hired by a major law firm. Anything else?
No, whatever you want. But see, I feel okay. But obviously, you called me and you want to talk about the march, so it must have been something for you.
Well,
what do you want to share? Is there anything is it funny to you that we want to talk about it now, 15 years later?
See, I saw Dell on TV.
Yes, Dell was there.
Dell Stewart was on TV, and I worked in Dell's law firm for 11 years. And I said, well, why is he on TV? And then he said something about, he said whatever he said. And then I called him, tried to find out why he was on TV. And so, you know, he knew that I had been to the March on Washington because I told him that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't know him at the time, and he didn't know me. And so that's why I called.
It's interesting because you're very reminiscent to me of my father. My father was a pragmatic man. Like, I feel like you were there, it was that, and you experienced it. And some people have talked to us about it being a very spiritual, very moving to tears, and it being the best the country's ever been and all that. And for you, it was just a day?
It was a day, correct. It was a day.
Interesting.
Yeah. Actually, I went to work when it was over. Put my top back. I always had two convertibles, one convertible in the service, but I got this new one when I got out of the service. Put my top back and went on to work.
Did your parents have a thought about you being there? Did they ask you about it, or?
Not really. No, they just kept my sign where it says, "We demand equal housing now."
I wish you had it now.
Well, I wish I had it, kind of had it too, but.
Do you have any kids?
Yes, I have kids. Yeah, I have a daughter who's a OBGYN in New Jersey, and a son who got him out of Morehouse. That's why I don't have any money anymore. And
do you talk to them about it? I mean, maybe not to you, but for us in this room, if I heard the "I Have a Dream" speech, it'd probably be something I would remember, like, chill bumps still this day. But no, it's just that is just so interesting.
Yeah.
Did you feel, was your experience different than the typical black experience then, being that with the military and you knew you were going to go to college? Like, did you feel that your life was full in its own way, that those issues weren't as important to you, or?
They were not as important to me back then as they became as I got older, right?
Do you think it's just that the ego of youth? Because I know I was, guilty of, when you're young, you're infallible, you don't think of anything that matters like it does later on. It was kind of that youthful indulgence, you think, that it didn't seem monumental?
My recollection is it was just another gathering of people, and I went because I wanted to be a part of the gathering, but everybody kept saying it was going to be peaceful, you know, and so that's why I went. Right.
We done some research and stuff, and I've heard from many people how it was so well organized.
Yeah, it was organized.
Very calm, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and
I don't understand how all those people came on the buses and the trains and the things, the airplanes, and everybody was, you know, it was just so peaceful and so organized.
We yesterday, Bob and I had the pleasure of meeting two people who were there, and one of my favorite comments the gentleman made is afterwards he and his buddy stayed the night, and he said it was a fun party evening, and he wanted, his goal was to meet women from all 50 states. He met 37 is what he told us. 37 states he did. So I'm sure he must have had some fun that evening.
Yeah.
Well, were you able to leave the car, get to your car afterwards? Was it hard to get back and go,
No, I knew how to get around Washington because I was from D.C.
Exactly.
And, King was still living. It wasn't like it was after 68 when they shot him. I wasn't even there. I was in Cambridge. But, no, I knew how to get around.
Well, and then you said a little bit ago that you felt differently later. Did you find yourself becoming a little bit more sensitive to certain issues? Did that perspective change for you? And was it?
I think when I got to Cambridge and we started the Harvard Black Law Students Association, I think I became aware of certain things then. The fact that we didn't have a black professor, and or nobody professor or sub-professor, under-professor. We had nobody there who was at that level who was black.
What was it like your experience as a student? Did you hang out mostly with the other black students, or did you?
Yes, mostly. See, I was married too, and so I didn't live on the campus. So I lived in town, and I partied and hung with other black students.
Did you move to St. Petersburg shortly thereafterwards, or?
I don't think I stayed for graduation. Right? I really don't. I think we left, and then I find out that Barack's dad was living in the place next door to where I was living. I didn't know that back then, but I found that out when I went back to when I went up for a thing at Otis Air Force Base. I ran around Cambridge to see what it was like and so forth. I found that out. Somebody said he was there, but I wouldn't have known him. There were Africans all over the damn place.
Do you have any memories or stories of being here in Florida? Was it an easy ride for you? Was it not? Was there difficult times as far as being because of racial issues or anything?
Well, the only thing that I can recall is that I was treated like, oh, it's you, oh, you're black, that sort of thing. I mean, no one said anything, but it wasn't easy being the first one. And as a matter of fact, the black lawyers in Florida, because we had a National Bar Association where we used to have a convention. I mean, not a convention. We used to have meetings every 3 months or something like that. And they told me that I would never be made a shareholder or a partner. They would say partner because of my blackness. And I just stuck with the firm I was with, and I was made at the same time that everybody else was made. Now, at their own time, but it was, you needed 7 years,
right,
which is when I was made a shareholder after 7 years. But it was kind of, because I represented upper class people and corporations, And I didn't represent the little guy, you know, until I went with Dell's firm. And he had a lot of little guys. When I went with his firm is when I represented the little people. By the way, a guy used to cut my hair in D.C. See, I thought this movie, The Butler, was about him.
Oh, you told me this.
Yeah, and I called Steve Brissall, who's a movie critic for the Tampa Bay Times, and talked to him about it. He said he didn't talk to the screenwriter. And I've talked to Steve before. But I went to the computer yesterday, the computer I told you about, where I have to go somewhere within my community. And I got on, and his name was Preston Bruce. And he was the head doorman for 5 presidents, starting with Eisenhower. And he actually put a book out, which seemed to be too much on Amazon.com. I mean, it seemed like he died. He was 88 years old when he died, but he's a very distinguished looking man. He cut my hair. I mean, he was just a barber, you know?
He was a barber and, did you have 2 jobs then?
He must have had 2 jobs because he cut my hair. He didn't cut it all the time, but he cut my hair. And then he went down and he became, they said he was, his book says he worked from 53 to 70 something. Preston Bruce, Sr. is his name now.
Did he share any stories with you?
No. I saw this movie.
Oh, you were going to go that
Yeah, I went to the movie.
Did you like it? Was it okay?
Let me just say this. The movie was okay. Steve Brissall gave it a B, and I would give it a B too.
Okay.
Oprah did a tremendous job.
I heard she does a good job.
Oh yeah, she did. She did a tremendous job. But I give it a B. You know, Forrest Whitaker, if he hadn't won for playing Idi Amin, the King of Scotland or whatever the name of the movie was, boy, that's an ugly dude. That is an ugly dude. Anyhow, the movie was I'd give it a B, just like Steve did.
Well, Mr. Griffin, you're fascinating to me. Like I said, you remind me so much of my father because.
Where's your father now?
He's not with us any longer. But he was. I feel like you're not going to put your experience in any kind of category that's going to look for somebody saying it's a black experience, it's this experience. It's just life to you, and that's how it seems.
Yes.
My dad was. I mean, my dad was not lucky enough to have an education, had it very, very hard, but you never heard him complain about it. You never heard him whine about it. It's just, I think that there was maybe a generation of people who just, it was what it was, right?
Yeah, it was what it was. Yeah.
Did your children have any issues when they were, how old were they when they were in school? Like, what year were they in school by that point? In the 70s, maybe?
70, that's too early.
Too early?
No, I just graduated in 70 from
that's
Cambridge.
true. Well, I'm saying, do you guys remember, I was speaking to these 2 people yesterday who had the water fountains, and did you experience the water fountains and the restrooms and all that?
See, I never went across the 14th Street Bridge.
That's why I go.
So I didn't see it. As a matter of fact, just let me say this. I didn't find out until recently why, whenever I got on a train in D.C., I saw all these black people, Negroes, I call them, eating chicken out of a shoebox. I didn't know until recently why they were doing that. I didn't realize that they couldn't go in the dining car because once you got on a train in D.C., I was always going to Detroit or some darn place, and I didn't realize that you couldn't go to the dining car because you could get on the train and go right to the dining car. I guess once you got to D.C., things changed.
Gotcha.
And so, I that's the way I was. I never knew. I never asked my parents why these people were eating chicken out of a shoebox. But actually thought it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, a good meal's a good meal, and I still like where it's coming from.
Yeah, I'm sure the chicken is good. Right.
You guys have anything for Mr. Griffin at all? This
Okay.
It's we've, like I said, we talked to, it'll probably be about 10 people when we're
Yeah.
done with all this, and everybody has a very unique take on it, and
I'm surprised that you talked to so many people from this area who actually went to Washington.
well, it's growing. Initially, I only had a few, and it's gotten to be.
I'm not sure I would have gone, you know, if I didn't live there. But I was there, I knew about it, and I had a car, and I knew how to get around.
Well, and in all honesty, most people we spoke to are not from here. I mean, they are here now, but a couple went from Boston, from Chicago, or
really?
Cleveland area. Exactly. There was the two we spoke to yesterday were part of the youth council with the NAACP, and they were selected, and they drove up in a 5-car caravan, I believe.
Okay.
So they had some stories to tell where the car broke down, got a little scary at times. So it was. You know,
oh yeah.
I think it's.
I can imagine.
I think it's maybe it's a southern versus northern experience that you've had. You know.
Yeah, could be. Well, DC was funny. You know, I was there were 2 Negroes who were in high school with me. They were in the same class. I was the 3rd one. It was a military prep school, Washington D.C., St. John's. College high school it was called, and when I went to school on a streetcar or bus, sometimes you'd pass by this barber shop where all the barbers were black, all of the patrons were white, and I couldn't go in there and get my hair cut. DC. You could DC, we had no signs. You could sit anywhere on a bus or a streetcar, but you couldn't go to the theater downtown. You had to go to the Lincoln, the Howard, the Booker T, and there was another theater, Republic. There were 4 theaters you could go to. They were all up around where Ben's Chili Bowl is now. And you probably, if you follow the president, you see sometimes he goes to Ben's Chili Bowl. But they were up on that part of U Street and Georgia Avenue. But so that although they had no signs, I didn't see white and colored in terms of drinking fountains and so forth. Signs weren't on anything. You just knew that you weren't supposed to go there.
Kind of like through your friends or
the
buzz on the street.
Your parents tell you. And where we used to go for breakfast, for dinner, on many Sundays, is either the Smithsonian or the National Gallery of Art. We used to go there because that's a federal building, and you could go in there, and would go in and have Sunday dinner there. You know, it's like going out. So my parents and we went there quite often. And either the Smithsonian or the National Gallery. I don't remember which one it was right now.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father drove a truck, and my mother worked at the Commerce Department, and she taught the white people their jobs. Well, she did. She taught the white people their jobs, and you know, they moved on. They learned how to do whatever they were supposed to be doing, and moved on. And she stayed in the place. And there was a man for whom she worked, who used to go out every day. Mother told me, as soon as the liquor store opened, and get a half pint of something, bring it back, and you drink that all day. Right.
Was it a hardship to send you to this school for them? It sounds like it was a good school, or no? Or is it?
Oh yeah, it was a good. It was.
I mean, it seems like
one of the best schools in the city, and I think it must have been a hardship, but they didn't talk to me about that. I mean, it was, you know, whatever it was. I had to wear a uniform. I had to wear a uniform every day. And another thing about that is, even though I couldn't go in the 5 Kresge's or whatever, 5 and dime and eat, I could go in with the white guys and they say, just don't say anything. So apparently, those people would, is he a wrestler? Or, did you see that thing?
He was a belt.
So apparently, even though I looked away,